Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you. I see I have a couple of neighbors on the chat as well, Vasani, some individuals living around the corner from me. So it's great to be on this chat. To be honest with you, I have my warm slippers on, but also really comfortable. And I hope all of you are comfortable too, and you've grabbed a cup of coffee or a glass of water. So today I'm going to be speaking to you about the challenges facing entrepreneurs, but also how can they prepare themselves for the new way of work, the new norm. Normally, if I'm giving a talk, I would wake up about an hour beforehand, try and get ready for this presentation, get into a car, get stuck in traffic, be all stressed out. So I choose to look at the positives during this time as well. But on a more serious note, there are specific challenges that are facing entrepreneurs. I like my sessions to be very interactive, so I do encourage you to use the Q&A and the chat functionality as we move through today's presentation. So let's start by talking about what were some of the press highlights, just a couple of years ago. As early as last year, towards the end of last year, the IMM actually wrote an article, and this is one of the things that they actually presented, which is quite strange because you want to also make sure that you understand some of the dynamics facing entrepreneurs. So if you look at this highlight and headline, 2020 could be the year of the entrepreneur in South Africa. Now that sounds like such an optimistic and amazing view. And having worked with entrepreneurs, we could see firsthand how many of them were gearing up for delivering some great initiatives, some great projects. And the sectors that the IMM highlighted were manufacturing, tourism, and information technology. Now, if you just look at these sectors, agriculture is one of the only ones that are now with level 4 able to start producing and delivering again with limited production just prior to us shifting back to level 4. Manufacturing really limited. Tourism has been one of the industries that has been hardest hit, and we are currently engaging with the Department of Tourism as well to see what type of support programs could be delivered to these type of individuals in terms of looking their businesses from a digital perspective. And then information technology, again, limited activation now with level 4, and infrastructure limited as well. So if we move forward, this is, it's a really great headline. Every one of us as entrepreneurs want to see something like that, but it's not the reality. So what is the reality that we're currently facing? And what are some of the challenges? Now, if you are reading, and I'm sure most of you are during this time, and if you're looking at all of the communication from the National Small Business Council or forums that have been created for entrepreneurs, there's a list of 10 challenges that entrepreneurs face, the 5 most daunting challenges for entrepreneurs during these times. I've just moved to selecting 4 of these challenges that I think really impact an entrepreneur. And these 4 challenges are based and come from a model that we normally present on. It's 3 things that we focus on when we develop entrepreneurs. The first is access to markets, which is really important for entrepreneurs, and if the entrepreneur is sitting at the center. The second is what we refer to as access to development and then access to funding. Now, if you look at access to funding, so many of us as entrepreneurs are saying, oh my goodness, there's the Solidarity Fund, there's special instruments, but what is the funding that's actually needed by entrepreneurs? And that's what I want to touch on. So if you look at the 4 key areas from a funding, from a challenges perspective, the first we see as financial. And financial is not just being able to access funding for your business, but it's broken down into several other key areas. The second, and many of you will relate to this, is mental well-being. So I'd really like us to take some time to get into what do I refer to when I speak about mental well-being. And then staying connected, because this cabin fever is becoming real. It's that touch point that entrepreneurs need in order to move forward, in order to ratify their businesses, in order to have a sounding board. And then lastly, we're going to touch on access to markets. So you'll notice 2 of these form part of our 3-pillar framework as well, in terms of what's important to move an entrepreneur forward, what's important to have them access the right level of tools and techniques to grow their business and sustain their business. So let's move on to financial. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat line as well, just to make sure that I'm not missing any questions that you may have as we move forward. Okay, there's just a whole lot of good morning, so thank you for that. So let's move. Oh, Aniki has raised a hand. I'm not sure if you're waving or if you have a question, but if you have a question or something you want to share, please use the chat functionality or the Q&A. So let's move on to Q&A. Morning, will Jayshree be sharing the articles, resources she references? I know Vasani is recording the session, so the session will be shared, and the slides form part of the recording. But if you need the actual slide deck, there's not a lot of notes on it. I'm happy to share that as well. Okay, so let's move on to financial. So what are some of the challenges that we face from a financial perspective? And there are several, right? So just think about yourself for a moment. What are some of the financial challenges that you are facing? As entrepreneurs, there's definitely an issue with receiving payments. During this time, and even prior to lockdown, there are committees that have been set up to hold JSE listed companies responsible for paying small businesses on time within the 30 days that they are required to do so. So receiving payments on time now, with the situation we are faced with, has been compounded because organizations have other priorities. Resources that are responsible for payments are also being delayed. So how do they actually focus on making sure that they receive payments on time? Funding is another issue. And here, when we refer to funding, it's funding the daily operations of your business. And think about the fixed operational costs that an entrepreneur faces. Those costs are still relevant and need to be paid. So everything from salaries to rental to subscriptions have to be maintained. And many entrepreneurs are struggling at this time to actually meet their funding obligations that they have. In the work that we do, we also find that entrepreneurs are not as geared to manage their cash flows effectively. And during this time, they have to prioritize, like big business is prioritizing what they spend on. Entrepreneurs have to prioritize what they spend on. And this is everything from, do I buy groceries or do I pay my salaries? And I know it's oversimplifying the situation, but this is the reality that entrepreneurs are facing. Another great infographic that I saw recently showed that most entrepreneurs only have 16 days to 37 days of cash flow that are available to manage their businesses. And this is quite a scary thought. And if we are now, and if you do the maths, if we are close to 8 weeks, 7 weeks in lockdown, we've already eaten into the cash flow of many of these entrepreneurs. I'm just going to stop my share for a moment. Please bear with me. So just one moment, I apologize. Okay. Sorry, one of my other screens had just frozen, so I just want to use a new one. Okay, so if we move to financial challenges, they cut across most of these areas that I've referred to. I'd just like to get a feel from some of you that are on the line. What are some of the financial challenges that you currently experiencing? And you don't have to give us the details, or just generally, what have you seen happening out there? Okay. Cash flow, okay, definitely. Okay, let me just move to the Q&A line. I think there might be a question. So there's a question around funding. You've mentioned a number of finances meant to assist SMMEs. However, the challenges is to access these funds, how best entities entrusted with these funds could do to speed up the process. So Lingisa, I couldn't agree with you more. It is quite daunting. We ourselves have looked at some of these funds that are supposedly available to entrepreneurs. In order to access them as well, entrepreneurs need to make sure that all of their documentation is up to standard, all of their compliance documentation. Some of these funding instruments require quite a bit from an entrepreneur's perspective. I'm part of a group, so I've chosen to be part of a business owners group that helps and advises on what types of funds are available for specific sectors and what are some of the challenges in accessing those funds. And yes, you need to be more speedy, but think about it. I mean, you know, any organization dispersing this amount of funds and holding this amount of funding is going to be inundated with requests from Joe Public. And what that does is delays the decision-making process as well. I would have loved to see a lot more sector-specific funding instruments, which then allowed us to access these funds with you know, ease of accessing them, as opposed to the difficulties we're now facing. Okay, thank you so much for some of your comments on this as well. So let's move on. Okay, so we've talked about financial. Let's move to the next one, which is mental well-being. Now, we run several programs on entrepreneurship development, and I can tell you that one of the biggest challenges that we face with entrepreneurs as well is the emotional well-being, the psychology of the individual. So if we look at mental well-being, we chatted about cabin fever a little bit. Think about all of the negative news and fake news that some of us are being bombarded with on an ongoing basis. You know, there's information overload, there's uncertainty of when is my next paycheck coming? Will my clients even want to work with me going forward? Will my suppliers trust that I can deliver? And one of the pieces of advice that we gave entrepreneurs is, remember, during lockdown, no one else is doing the work you were meant to do. So the work might still be there for you. There is the issue of organizations reprioritizing, which it's understandable for entrepreneurs to be nervous. But in the most part, work will still need to be done. And hopefully, when all of this is over, entrepreneurs can fulfill some of those obligations. One of the initiatives we work with is with property entrepreneurs. And property entrepreneurs have also been so hard hit during these times because they're unable to actually fulfill on building, on putting up a fence. Although there are now other opportunities that have come up, and I'll touch on this when we talk about the new way of work and how can we gear our companies to focus on this. I see the chat function flashing, so I'm just going to go over there very quickly. Um, Big companies asking small businesses to defer payment when they are performing well. They push, okay, yes, definitely big companies should not be asking small businesses to defer payments. But remember, big companies are also going into huge financial losses during this time. So it's about how do you manage some of these priorities. I want to also talk about time to yourself. Now, many entrepreneurs, and those of you that are on the line that are entrepreneurs, many of you had decided long before lockdown that you would work from home because it makes sense working from home. You don't have to pay for operational costs from an office space perspective. But what happens now when your office space, already with these challenges, are now being consumed by your spouse who has to work from home, your kids who have to access online learning? So that space that you had to work and think and strategize doesn't exist anymore. So there's reduced time on that as well. Okay. You're also separated from your friends, you're separated from family, you are separated from clients. And you have to start sharing yourself, your time in helping with kids and their homework. You've got to spend time responsible in the kitchen, helping your spouse. And I know, all of this is, oh, is this really serious? But yes, it is, because it takes away from your time. And time is the commodity that entrepreneurs rely on the most. So that challenge becomes really, really crazy. Sorry, guys, one moment. Okay. The next challenge that we face is what we refer to as staying connected. And staying connected is about not just engaging with your clients, but staying connected with your mentor, your technical advisors, other entrepreneurs. We often say entrepreneurship is a lonely space. And because it's a lonely space, we actually look forward to working with others that are also facing similar challenges as we are, because we can bounce off our ideas. We can talk about some of the issues we face. We can ask for access to networks. And face-to-face contact is something that becomes critical in our growth phase as well. Busani, I'm just struggling to move my slides forward. Okay, I see it's working now. So staying connected is the next focus area. Let me just go to the Q&A line to see if there are any other questions. Okay. So there's a question here, and I think it's really, I'm going to touch on it. It's talking about what are your thoughts about an intrinsic link between financial and mental well-being? So Lalita, there is definitely a link between these two. And if you think about your financial well-being, which becomes a pillar to what you need to sustain your family, yourself, your household, if that is taken away from you and there's uncertainty there, already that puts a huge amount of pressure on your mental well-being. It's good to say, let's stay positive, but how do you stay positive when you are stressed about either losing your home or losing your business. So there's definitely an intrinsic link between financial challenges as well as mental well-being. One of the things I've chosen to do during this time is to start meditating. Now, I can't ask all of you to do something like this, but for me, meditation is about escaping into a different space in my mind where I can control my thoughts and I can also escape into positive thinking. Now, you can do that by reading a book, something positive, something maybe even fiction. So I have a bookshelf behind me, as you can see, but it's filled with nonfiction because I love consuming knowledge and other people's stories and how they have accomplished what they have. So I love consuming all of this knowledge. However, you can choose to escape into a movie, once in a while, or escape into a book about something totally unrelated to your field. Don't underestimate how important that is for your mental well-being as well. So if we move on to the last challenge, which is access to markets. Remember, your clients are also overwhelmed with requests from entrepreneurs. So accessing markets is not as simple as it used to be, where you could pick up the phone and you could call a client. I'm actually finding that it's more difficult for me to now speak to my clients than it was before lockdown, because they don't have as much time. I know it sounds crazy, but most big businesses have decided to take everything online, including all of their meetings. So where my clients previously would say, Jay, I'll call you while I'm on my way to a meeting, there is no time because they're sitting in back-to-back meetings because they can. There's no travel time in between. Lunch times are now just a figure of speech. You don't know when's your lunchtime. You don't know when you're able to grab a cup of coffee. You don't have to go and fetch the kids from school. And a lot of times that's when I would speak to my clients, when they're on their way to another company meeting. So I could catch up on where they were at. Clients are also now reprioritizing. I know you guys are seeing in front of you staying connected, but we have moved on to access to markets. So clients are reprioritizing and they themselves are experiencing new ways of work and how to engage. Many individuals in large corporates have also been told not to commit to any projects that they had committed to prior to lockdown. And when I say committed, not where there's a signed contract, but where they would have said to you, we're going to be delivering 3 new initiatives with you this year. We'll start around April. They've now been told, well, we're going to reprioritize. So let's use our company as an example. We focus on development of entrepreneurs, but development of staff as well for some of the banks. Our bank clients have said to us there will be no face-to-face training on non-essential areas until next year. So the banks have taken a decision not to work on any non-essential training, which will have a huge impact on all of the suppliers that provide training, as an example, for some of these larger groups. So the reprioritization has a huge impact on access to markets and ongoing commitments as well. So that's focusing on challenges. Now I'm going to move over to the chat function, and I want to see if there are any other challenges that you have experienced, and what are some of those challenges that you have faced as well. Okay, so there's a question here around, they say it's a buyer's market and the challenge for property investors to bid and buy for a property without viewing it. How does one navigate the space? It's a very interesting question. We have an entrepreneur that's actually had a product within his business that was focused on augmented reality and virtual reality. But during this period, he has upped that focus as well. There's another question with respect to property entrepreneurs. What about property owners? Many are keeping big losses. Okay, thanks. Payment holiday. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond to some of these questions outside of this, so to keep the conversation going, so that I don't take too much time on focus. Vasani will make these questions available to me, and I'll share my responses, and I'm sure he'll share it with the individuals as well. I just want to go into the Q&A line before we move on. Cash flow as a traumatologist. Oh, that's such an interesting, there's someone here on the Q&A that's a traumatologist. I use an unblocking technique to deal with mental and financial issues. Okay, that sounds very interesting. I'd love to hear more if I'm able to. Please do pop me a mail on this. You've mentioned a number of finances. Okay, we've covered that. I'd now like to move on, as an entrepreneur myself, but also as an innovator and a strategist. I love focusing on the positives. And although we have so many daunting challenges that we're facing, there's a new way of work. I mean, just me presenting to you via webinar is never easy, because I love seeing the reaction on people's faces. I love looking at you and asking you a question. I can't do that anymore. So I have to make use of technology platforms like webinars to get our messages across. But we've taken our business totally online for now, while we are in this situation. And I'm sure many of you can too. So let's move on to some of the opportunities and the new ways of work. Okay. So if you look at the new way of work again, lots of articles written in this space, lots of suggestions on what entrepreneurs can do. And I've chosen 4 specific areas to talk to you about today. The first is digital first. Agile design, being able to innovate, and then challenge driven. But I'm going to go through each one of these in a little more detail to give you a glimpse into what I think you as an entrepreneur can do in this space as well. So if we look at digital first, yesterday on one of my news alerts, I found a company that's called Zulzi that has just raised during this time 30 million rands for their startup. Now, Zulzi is an app that allows you to purchase your groceries and have it delivered to you, and they are in 4 provinces. I think the money reflected in the account just a couple of days ago. So if you think about where we're at with everything, a company like this is ideally positioned to offer a service that's needed at this point in time by using digital. So you've got to understand what products or services you have that you can take online. I know and I understand that not every business can go online, and it's frustrating sometimes, when you are one of those businesses. Like a property entrepreneur that's erecting fences cannot take their business online, because you cannot erect an online fence for a client. However, you can, during this time, create thought leadership on the erection of online fences. You can use this time to create thought leadership on the best practices about online fences. So when you start thinking about digital, also think about how you use this time to promote your business and services, so that you can be known to potential clients out there. We've also, decided to use things like Instagram and Instagram stories, as well as webinars. We're on a webinar right now, but using other platforms. So clients may also say to you, I don't want to use this platform. So it's about investigating different platforms that will suit the requirements of your client as well. When you're running something like online facilitation, it's difficult sometimes to do this using online platforms, but there are other plug-in tools. Because we had to set up so many online meetings, I even found a free calendar tool called Calendly that integrates with Zoom, so that the Zoom meeting is created within the calendar app. And if you're setting up 15 to 20 meetings per cohort for one-on-one online discussions, these are the tools that you have to start using and embracing as an individual. So I encourage you, if you're an entrepreneur that's looking to focus online, is to investigate some of these tools. And then lastly, because I want to start with this, because not every business can actually take their business online from a sales perspective, but please do look at online sales tools as well as platforms and e-commerce platforms. There are at least 8 to 10 free e-commerce platforms that you could leverage. Even Shopify, which is one of the biggest globally, allows you 90 days free to take your business online. So what better time, than trying to use the service to take products online. Even learning products can be taken online. I found a new company that's even doing online speaker certification. So they do an evaluation of you for 90 minutes. They check your sound, your lighting, your connectivity, your content, and then you get a little badge that you can put onto your LinkedIn or your other platforms. So many companies are looking to find opportunities using digital first as a thinking mechanism. Okay. The next area that I want to focus on for new way of work is something called Agile Design. And this is not about, from a technology perspective, Agile. It's about designing your business to be Agile. And what do I mean by that? So if you think about Agile and what is the actual definition, it's about building a flexible organization capable of reacting fast to unpredictable changes. So if you think about adapting to unpredictable changes, what better time to think about our organization structures right now? What do we need to do? In order to have an agile organization and an agile team, you've got to have an empowered team. They've got to be able to make decisions. There has to be high standards and alignment. So whatever your vision is, McKinsey actually refers to 5 key areas when focusing on agile and what makes an organization an agile organization. The first is a clear and shared purpose or strategy. They talk about the North Star, and this is important because everyone's got to know what you need to achieve, especially if you're working remotely. I mean, your team members at all times should know exactly what you're trying to achieve. All of our program managers, as an example, are working on new content proposals as well as delivery mechanisms to suit the times that we're in. But they all know the idea is to move our organization to a digital first organization. This next is a network of empowered individuals as well as visions and teams. So what does that mean? It means surrounding yourself with individuals that are really, really smarter than you, that can help you deliver what needs to be delivered. And then rapid decision and learning cycles. Agile is all about rapid decision making. But rapid does not mean irresponsible. It just means you've got to be able to make decisions very quickly. And if you think about where we're at right now with so many decisions that have to be made on the fly, you've got to have an organization that's structured to make rapid decisions. And I love this one. It's one of my favorites because most times papers from a McKinsey or a Deloitte or a PwC never talk about passion. But the fourth one is dynamic people model that ignites passion. And this igniting passion is about, why do I want to wake up and still work for this organization? Why do I want to make a difference? What does my role have that's going to make a difference to individuals out there? And this purpose and passion is something that needs to come out a lot more in the new ways of work, because we are reaching new territories. This is uncharted territories. We've never been here before, and most people are going to start looking for value. We realized that it was going to be really difficult to charge individuals to access our training, as an example. But we still wanted to make a difference to community. So we decided to make all of the training we offer to paid programs. It's already been paid by clients. Make that content available to anyone wanting to access it on our YouTube channel. But ask individuals if they found value to make a donation to a social cause. And we chose Phoenix, which is a platform for students to access fees for their university studies. So if they found value, and we were able to do that because we're a small, agile company and we make decisions based on what is right from a passion perspective and a purpose perspective. And lastly, and this talks to our first bubble, is new generation enabling technology. So are you embracing the latest, greatest technology for your business? And it's different for every business, but it's important to know what technologies will help take your business to the next level. So let's take the example of Smanga, who's one of our property entrepreneurs, on how he's now using the virtual reality and augmented reality to allow you to take a walk into someone's home, to view a commercial property site using augmented reality. And those apps are available, and it's now how is he using it to take his business forward into the new way of work. Okay. So let's move on to the third, which is innovate. Now, I love the space innovation. I've studied it. I've written a paper on it. I've managed innovation in other organizations. And innovation is an opportunity to take a challenge and convert that into an opportunity, into a business. And lots of businesses will start and thrive from this crisis that we're in, especially those that have put the customer at the center and understood exactly what it is that they are trying to solve for during these challenging times. And it's also about creating disruptive innovations, but using some of your current capabilities. So what do I mean by this? Innovation doesn't always have to be radical innovation, something no one has seen before. Sometimes it's a simple solution using your existing capability, but that can disrupt the market. So entrepreneurs, and some of them, so for example, one of the entrepreneurs we're engaging with has a factory, and in her factory she produces furniture. But because she has a factory, she has got production capability. And because no one is now ordering furniture, she has converted a part of her factory to produce foot pedal sanitizer dispensers where you could, use your foot. The device allows you to squirt, not using your hands. Another entrepreneur has used his factory to create spray booths that could be placed near locations of ATMs or the entrances of malls. So they have opportunities of using their existing capability, but to come up with new innovative products and services. So it's important to look at how do you change part of your business so that your business can actually deliver what needs to be. And this is what we refer to as business model innovation. Taking some of your existing business models, you may have completed something like a business model canvas. Taking just part of that and looking at ways of innovating so that you can deliver to a new customer, to a new supplier, on a new product range or a new revenue stream. So business model innovation is important as well. Here, I would really encourage you to just block out a couple hours in your diary where you can take some of your existing products and services and think about ways to innovate, or look at what's happening and find new products. And that brings us to the last new way of work, which is challenge driven. This ties into innovation. And what this actually refers to is using concepts like human-centered design and design thinking, putting your customer at the center of everything that you do so that you can deliver products and services that are challenge driven. So if and we will get into a conversation in a bit, but if I asked you, what are some of the challenges we're facing? And for me, the challenge was not being able to access my entrepreneurs. How do you solve for that challenge? By delivering content online, by having Instagram interviews with individuals. I've started a Let's Chat webinar series where I interview different players from the industry every week. And every second week, I'll be profiling an entrepreneur. That came out of a direct challenge that my clients are experiencing. Remember, you have a client, and some of you have an end client. So my end client is the entrepreneur, but my client is the company that pays for the entrepreneurship development services that we offer that entrepreneur. So also understand what the challenges each one of your clients are facing and how are you solving. Because my client wants to see that their name is still associated with development which they have paid for. My end client, which is the entrepreneur, still needs to receive the development. So you've got to look at the challenges you're facing. And there are innovation tools that help you extract innovations from challenges. They're called creativity tools, they're called ideation tools. So I highly recommend that you look at some of these tools and use them effectively as well in terms of taking that to the next level. So I'm going to move on to, so please do share with me what are some of the new skills that you've learned during this time? Besides baking bread and making banana bread and maybe painting, what are some of the business skills or technical skills that you have learned for your business during this time as well? Okay, let's move on to the chat. And then I'm going to go into Q&A. I think we can actually move on to the Q&A section of this. Before we move on to that, I'd really love you to take a minute or a screenshot of this and paste it somewhere, because this is one of the quotes that I thought really resonated with this time and situation that we are in right now. Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to the resources currently controlled. And so many of us feel that we have lost control. So I'm going to give you a minute to just look at that and take a shot of it if you need to. And let's move on to the last. So we can now move into the Q&A. I'm going to go into the Q&A to see what questions we have. You've mentioned a number of finances. Okay, we've covered that. Yes, thank you for that. Lalita says, if entrepreneurs focus on developing strategies and implement them at a financial level, it creates a degree of mental wellness that frees one's mind to innovate in respect of their business. So, yes, Lalita, you're absolutely right. Think about it. When you are overwhelmed and you have a million things to do, it actually feels liberating when you make a list of what you need to do. And in the same way, if you can take this time to focus on your strategy, what is it that you need to change in order to survive this new way of work? What is it that you need to focus on? Make a list of potential clients. It always helps making a list of the name of the calendar app is called Calendly. I'm actually going to put it onto the chat so that you can check it out. It's called Calendly. And then just make sure you use the plug-in function with Zoom or other calendar functions as well, so that you can, oh, sorry. I just have to type that again because I didn't send it to all participants. Okay. All right, I've put the response to that on the chat. Sorry, I joined Jays. Where's the best way to users who are scaling their business? Okay. So to answer you, hi Guy. So Guy's on the line. I'm assuming it's the same Guy Harris that I know. So Guy, the one scalerator that you refer to that I've come across is, yes, you're right, Endeavor, but not the normal Endeavor program, the one that's focused with the SME fund, and that's looking at businesses with a 50 million and above turnover. And I know Pavlo Fatidas from Auric also focuses on businesses with a 50 million and above turnover. So you could look at that. If I come across any others, I'll let you know as well. It depends on the sector as well. So there might be some sector-specific accelerators. So on the tech side, you might want to try Keith Van Zyl with Knife Capital as well. Okay. In the event that I've been able to innovate and offer a new product range, how do you propose one accesses new clients when there is time constraints? Okay, the same way you would if there are no time constraints or if there are no lockdown constraints or any of the other constraints we are facing. I highly recommend that if you are creating a new product or service, you've still got to validate that product and service. The way you validate that product and service will now differ from traditionally, where you would be able to go out and ask someone, would you use this product? How much would you pay for it? Where would you like to buy it? You know, how would you like me to sell it to you? Now you would do a lot of that online. I mean, you can do an online product demo. So I could stand up and say to you, hi guys, this is a new product that I've created. It's nice and shiny. I can speak through it. It's flexible enough. I can move this around. How much would you be willing to pay for it? So there's nothing preventing you from using your online tools to also share your products and services. Okay. So another question, the ones that I have just, okay, I'm gonna make sure I don't miss any. So Vasani, if I do miss any, please highlight those. I'm just scrolling down here. How do small businesses that were just about to start doing businesses before lockdown overcome this challenge and survive? The ones that have just started their business only a few days or weeks. I mean, Marcella, this is such a a sore topic, and it's so close to my heart as well. And I really feel for the entrepreneurs that have just, gotten their headspaces right and started to focus on a business. Um, think about it as an extended time to work on your business. Most entrepreneurs and most business people, and those of you that are joined me, you know this. You're working so hard in your business that you never have time to work on your business. And I know we have a lot of time now, but because we don't have the mental well being that we need, a lot of us are actually procrastinating. So we would rather go and bake a bread or do some gardening or watch a movie than actually sit down and think about our business because it feels overwhelming. But take some time to actually work on your business during this time, and be very honest and realistic about what some of the situations are that you're facing. So one of the entrepreneurs that we're working with, we had a catch-up session recently, and he said, I should rather just focus on my business as a side hustle, and I need to make money. I need to go back into consulting. Remember, although those are things we might want to do, that also might not be possible. But on the other hand, because we are now in this situation, organizations have realized they can employ people from anywhere in the world because people can actually work remotely and work remotely responsibly. So you can also think about finding a way to generate income using your consulting skills or your knowledge skills. And while you're making income, start focusing on growing your business again. Okay. How do you supervise remotely, and how often does one need to have meetings? This is the age-old question, I think, from the beginning of time or the beginning of meetings. I feel that you should only have meetings when you need a decision to be made. You need consensus, and you need people to either make a decision or to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. You should not have meetings to do check-ins. You can do that using documents or shared documents. Supervising remotely, be considerate of the staff members that are still under your control. Remember, they have families that they are responsible for. They have children that they are responsible for. They have commitments that they did not have prior to this lockdown because they had additional support like nannies and helpers who are now not available to them. So if you are a supervisor or a leader, be very considerate of the individuals that you are mandated and you are entrusted to lead and support. I gave a TEDx talk on people are so much more than the jobs they do. And there's no other time than now to actually realize how important it is to actually recognize that people are more than that job title. They are mums, they are wives, they are sisters, they are daughters, and they have all of these responsibilities that they need to take care of as well. Okay, I think I've answered all of the questions on the Q&A line. If I have missed any, I apologize. I'm going to go to the chat line as well to see if there are any other questions. Bridget asked, any e-commerce tools that you can recommend to put your business on a digital platform? So Bridget, I don't have the list in front of me, but if you do a search and just type in free online sales tools or free e-commerce tools, you'll find Shopify comes up first, and then there are at least 7 or 8 others that come up straight after. And there are some South African ones as well that are available. So you're welcome to use any one that you think is suitable for your business. I've got another comment from Lalita that says, my learning during the lockdown is to equip myself with IT skills. Great. Webinar, Microsoft Teams. It was tough initially to have meeting trainings on these platforms, but with some frequency, it becomes easier. You're absolutely right. everything becomes easier, the more you use it. You would have saw earlier today, I had a little bit of a technical glitch. So I was using my iPad to share because I like writing, but the share functionality just froze halfway through. But as a backup, I have the presentation on this laptop as well. So when you are working, and no matter how many times we tested this, every time we tested it, it worked, right? But when you are working in this type of environment, make sure you have your backups in place, make sure you have proper lighting, make sure you have a great web camera and a safe and a quiet space as well that you can work in. Okay, I'm going to go in. All right, so I think I've answered all of the questions. Oh, there's 4 new messages. Let me just move on. Okay. So Guy, there's scaling. I think I've answered that question. That was earlier. Should an entrepreneur have? Okay. I have a question here. Good morning. What new skills should an entrepreneur have to survive? Okay, we have touched on that in the last section. I'm sure you would have seen that already. I think these questions were from much earlier in the morning. So if there are no other questions, I think, oh, there's some new ones that have come through on the Q&A line. Okay. Oh, so there's a question. Are you able to share details of the businesses you've shared, that is sanitizer dispenser? Definitely, if any of you want to contact me, you can reach me on info@yiedi.co.za. I'm going to actually put my email address on here. In fact, on a new way of work and accessing markets, what is quite interesting, and we'll be closing off with this comment. A bank client contacted us and said, could you send us a list of any COVID-19 related products and services that could help us with the management and maintenance of our branches and of our ATMs to meet the COVID-19 requirements? And we were able to pull out about 8 entrepreneurs that offer products and services across different areas, everything from floor stickers to remote sanitizers to spray booths to using heat detection in terms of spatial recognition, from a technical entrepreneur. So there are so many solutions that entrepreneurs have. So access to markets might look different, but they do exist. I'm going to actually stop there and hand over to Vasani, or if there are no other questions, I think, okay, we've answered those questions. I'm just going to go one more time into the chat to make sure we haven't left anything out. Thank you for that. We have a comment. I use days in my personal development and increasing and enhancing my service products. Okay. You're welcome, Shadrach. I see you have a comment around the presentation. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone for joining us. It was great engaging with all of you. I must admit it was quite interesting questions, and it gave me time to also reflect on the challenges and opportunities facing entrepreneurs. So feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn or via email. The contact details, you can just do a search for Jayshree Naidoo and that should pop up as well. So if you have any other questions or comments, I'm going to just move over. I see there's some new ones that, okay. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Sonny, over to you. We've got about 3 minutes to spare.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you, Jayshree, for that wonderful presentation. For all those of us, for all those that are still with us, you'll be getting a follow-up email to the slides and the recorded presentation. I think generally our take today is that we still have a lot of innovation coming through thanks to COVID-19. Okay, have a wonderful day. Thanks again, Jayshree.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.